The world of Frank Costello, the Prime Minister of the Underworld, was not one of overt violence. It was a universe of whispers in oak-paneled rooms, of handshake agreements that carried the weight of law, of influence measured in judicial appointments and union endorsements. His power was a subtle, pervasive pressure, like the atmosphere. It was felt, not seen. To betray such a man was not to invite a storm. It was to tamper with the very air you breathed, believing you could create your own oxygen. For 11 years, Senator William T. Wild Bill Hawthorn, a man whose career Costello had built from the Queensborough presidency to the marble halls of Washington, convinced himself he had done just that. He had breathed free air. He had taken the ultimate gamble, using the political capital Frank Costello had given him to spearhead a sensational, headline-grabbing committee investigating organized crime's tentacles in the shipping unions. It was a direct, calculated betrayal, a public crucifixion of his benefactor to cement his own image as a crusading reformer. And it worked, spectacularly. Costello, ever the pragmatist, took a fall. A short, comfortable stint in a white-collar facility, a masterpiece of legal maneuvering that turned a potential life sentence into a manageable inconvenience. He retreated, or so it seemed. And Hawthorn? He soared. For 11 years, he was the golden boy, the fearless senator who had stared down the mob. He lived in a Georgian mansion in Georgetown, his dinner parties attended by cabinet members and network news anchors. His concern was the Soviet threat, the civil rights bill, the price of wheat. The name Frank Costello became a relic, a bogeyman from a successfully conquered past, a footnote in his own triumphant biography. His only worry, or so he would joke faintly to his wife on certain uneasy mornings, was a peculiar recurring mystery. Every few months, upon entering his formal dining room for breakfast, he would find, placed with geometric precision beside his sterling silver grapefruit spoon, a straight razor. Not a modern safety razor, an old-fashioned, wicked-looking thing with a mother-of-pearl handle, its blade folded neatly into its groove. It was never threateningly open. It was just there, silent, polished to a mirror finish. The first time he'd been baffled, then irritated. He'd fired the butler, a quiet man from the old neighborhood who had come with a recommendation Hawthorn no longer cared to remember. The second time, with a new staff, it happened again. He installed locks, then cameras. The footage showed nothing, just an empty room, and then, in the next frame, the razor. It became a chilling, intimate joke between him and his own fear. His security detail, a group of ex-FBI men, treated it as a prank, a sick one, but beneath their notice. They were there to stop bullets, not psychodramas. Hawthorn, in his heart, knew. It was a message. But from whom? And what did it mean? It was too elegant, too patient for a common enemy. A threat would be a bullet through the window, a firebomb. This was a punctuation mark, a comma in a sentence he couldn't see. It was a reminder that someone could get to him, past all his defenses, not to kill him, but to dine with his anxiety every single morning. He convinced himself it was the ghost of his conscience, a metaphor made steel. He even, in a moment of drunken bravado at his club, called it the price of doing righteous business. He was wrong. It was not a ghost. It was a receipt for a transaction made 11 years prior, and Frank Costello was merely waiting for the compound interest to mature to its most devastating value. To understand the exquisite, glacial nature of Costello's vengeance, you must first understand the nature of the original sin. Hawthorn's betrayal wasn't just business, it was a violation of cosmology. In Costello's world, there were rules, codes, systems. You could fight, you could compete, you could even kill within the understood parameters. But the relationship between a political figure and his patron was sacred. It was the symbiosis that made the machine work. The politician provided legitimacy, protection, a facade. The patron provided the means, the money, the votes, the quiet solutions. Hawthorn didn't just quit the arrangement, he tried to burn down the entire temple for a publicity photo. He turned the tools Costello gave him, his office, his credibility, against the hand that forged them. In that moment, Hawthorn ceased to be a flawed ally. He became a chaotic element, a virus in the system, and Frank Costello was the system's most meticulous immune response. Immediate, violent retaliation was the language of hotheads like Albert Anastasia. It was messy, it attracted more scrutiny, and it turned a traitor into a martyr. Costello's way was colder, cleaner, and far more absolute. He would not destroy Hawthorn's body, he would dismantle Hawthorn's reality, brick by carefully removed brick, until the senator stood naked in the ruins of a life he believed he had built himself. The first 5 years were a masterclass in passive erosion. Costello, from his prison cell and later his suite at the Waldorf, didn't lift a finger against Hawthorn directly. Instead, he simply withdrew the substratum. The steady, anonymous donations to Hawthorn's state party machinery, they found new, more loyal homes. The union leaders who could turn out 10,000 phone bank volunteers with a nod, they became curiously unavailable, citing new priorities. The newspaper editors who owed favors for killed stories about underage indiscretions, they retired or were transferred. It was slow, imperceptible. Hawthorn's political base didn't collapse, it developed a slow leak. His margins of victory grew thinner. He blamed changing demographics, national tides. He never felt the hand, he only felt the gradual tilting of the floor. Years 6 through 8 saw the introduction of strategic friction. A key piece of legislation Hawthorn championed, a Port Authority bill that would have cemented his legacy, was mysteriously gutted in committee. The rival senator who led the charge just acquired a stunningly profitable vending machine concession at the new Idlewild Airport, a concession quietly facilitated by a Costello associate. A brilliant, crusading junior aide on Hawthorn's staff, a young man tipped for greatness, was suddenly embroiled in a scandal involving a male prostitute. The evidence, compelling and photographically detailed, arrived at a rival newspaper not from the police, but from a private detective agency with no known client. The aide resigned in disgrace, and a vein of moral authority was drained from Hawthorn's office. Again, no trace led to Costello. It was the political version of a perfect crime, causality without a visible criminal.
Then came the razor. It was the first truly personal touch. It wasn't sent to his office. It was placed in his home at his breakfast table. It was a shift in strategy from the systemic to the intimate. It was Costello saying in the clearest possible terms, "I am not just in your politics. I am in your home. I see the china your wife picked out. I know the brand of marmalade you prefer. The fortress you think you live in has a door I can open at will." It was psychological terrorism of the highest order. Every morning it appeared, it screamed a silent question. Is today the day the blade is open? Is today the day the message changes? It kept Hawthorn in a state of low-grade, perpetual dread, fraying his nerves, clouding his judgment. He became paranoid, snapping at allies, seeing enemies in shadows. His once sharp political instincts grew dull. He started making mistakes. The final act, in year 11, was the symphony's crescendo. It required a single, elegant move. Costello had a man, a forgettable clerk in the records department of the district court. This man, for a modest but life-changing sum, accessed not a criminal file, but a civil one. A sealed divorce proceeding from 1937 involving a young, ambitious city councilman named William Hawthorn and a showgirl named Lillian Dupree. The file contained letters, promises, and a signed notarized agreement for a quiet monthly settlement to ensure a certain paternity claim never saw the light of day. The child, a son, had been given up for adoption. Hawthorn had buried this so deeply he had almost convinced himself it was a dream. Costello didn't blackmail Hawthorn with it. That would have been crude, a transaction. Instead, he had the file, photocopied in its entirety, delivered in a plain brown envelope to one person, the now-grown son, a serious-minded schoolteacher living in Poughkeepsie named David Miller. Included was a single typewritten note. The man who denied you is about to receive the Man of the Year award from the Family Values Council. He lives at 2817 Cambridge Place, Georgetown. The truth is your property. What followed was not orchestrated by Costello, it was unleashed by him. David Miller, armed with irrefutable proof, confronted his biological father. Hawthorn, terrified and cornered, reacted not with compassion but with a panicked, arrogant threat. He offered money, he threatened David's career, he did everything a guilty, powerful man does when his meticulously constructed facade is cracking. David Miller, idealistic and righteously furious, went to the one newspaper Hawthorn's influence couldn't touch, a scandal sheet that salivated at the opportunity. The story exploded not as a political hit, but as a sordid human tragedy. The senator's secret son, the showgirl he paid off, family values champions lost heir. It was irresistible. The Man of the Year award was rescinded. Hawthorn's wife left him, the humiliation too public to bear. His political allies, already strained by years of subtle estrangement, abandoned him, seeing a sinking ship. The committee investigations he had once chaired were now turned on him, probing campaign finance irregularities that suddenly seemed to surface from a dozen different sources. On the day Hawthorn announced he would not seek re-election, a broken man at 60, his Georgetown mansion sold to pay legal fees, he sat for a final breakfast in the empty, echoing dining room. The movers were coming that afternoon, and there, on the bare mahogany table, was the razor again. This time, it was open. The blade caught the morning sun, a sliver of merciless light, and beside it was a new object, a single crisp $100 bill, the kind used in 1,000 discrete transactions. It was the final statement. The razor, the ever-present threat, now bared. The $100 bill, the original currency of their compact, the symbol of the cheap financial solution Hawthorn had always believed in, returned to him as the sum total of his ruined life. It was Costello's signature, not a boast, not a gloat. A simple, elegant closing of the ledger. The interest had been collected. The account was settled. The legacy of Frank Costello's 11-year revenge is not a tale of the mob. It is a case study in the architecture of power in the modern age. He demonstrated that true control is not about who you can kill, but whose story you can write. Hawthorn had tried to write Costello's story as a criminal kingpin. In response, Costello rewrote Hawthorn's story from patriotic senator to a hypocritical, abandoned ruin. He used time as a weapon, allowing Hawthorn's own anxiety and his neglected sins to do the majority of the work. The razor wasn't a threat of violence, it was a psychological scalpel, making a tiny, recurring incision in Hawthorn's sense of security until he bled out his confidence from within. The real vengeance was not in the revelation of the secret son, but in the meticulously engineered context for that revelation. The eroded support system, the heightened scrutiny, the shattered personal life, that ensured it would be a killing blow, not just a scandal. In the end, William Hawthorn didn't lose to a gangster. He lost to a master psychologist, a supreme political tactician, and a patient archivist of human weakness. He lived 11 years in peace, believing he had escaped, but he had merely been living in the long, quiet prologue of Frank Costello's final, devastating sentence. The man who betrayed the Prime Minister of the Underworld didn't die in a hail of bullets. He died 1,000 small deaths over a decade, and the last thing to go was the illusion that he had ever been in control. The razor on the table wasn't a weapon, it was a mirror. And in its polished steel, Hawthorn finally saw the fragile, hollow man he had always been, and the immense, quiet force that had simply been waiting for the right moment to show him.